All right, Russ, since we brought up the different tiers of the Nintendo Switch Online, GameCube games. I think we talked about it last week when we were talking about just emulation in general. I said I don't emulate Nintendo 64 games and I don't emulate GameCube games because the controllers are never good for that. Well, you can buy N64 controllers for the Nintendo Switch. You can buy GameCube controllers for the Switch, and you can emulate those games as Nintendo drip feeds those out. Is that appealing to you, knowing that now it's like it's just going to work and you don't have to fight with RetroArch in order to get your inputs recognized by the controller that you're using?
Yeah, no, I have not even thought once like, oh, that's definitely something I want, because I don't pay for the expansion pack. So the idea of, right now $35 a year for like the family group thing, with like our family and stuff, that works for me. $80 a year does not, even if it comes with GameCube, because I've got other ways to do that. And so I'm not too worried about that. I would much rather play my GameCube games, through Dolphin, try out some widescreen hacks and stuff like that. But the controller, I'm interested in picking that up. I'm assuming you'll have to have a Switch Online account in order to even order it in the first place. It'll hoping it doesn't require
work with the Switch too.
Well, that's what I'm hoping, is that it won't, that it'll be just a Bluetooth controller. But we'll see. Like if it's just a regular Bluetooth controller, then I will definitely be picking this up. Unless I also have to buy the expansion pack in order to order it, because I'm not doing that, and so we'll see how it goes. The interesting thing for me, too, is when they were showing off those games, they showed off F-Zero GX, which in its options menu, in-game menu, there's a widescreen option. And they didn't show that. They showed the game playing in 4:3. And I was like, why are they doing that? Like, do they not want to confuse people in saying that, oh, we're going to have widescreen, like, options, But that game has a widescreen option, and that's the way to play it. And so that was very interesting, is that they didn't even show that off. So who knows what's going on?
I think it'll be interesting for, like, games that support that via emulation, because like sometimes that can be hit or miss on emulators, but hopefully if Nintendo's implementing it right, like it should be just hit. It should always work for the games that support widescreen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say that like this isn't necessarily related to the GameCube games being added to Nintendo Switch Online, but the N64 on Nintendo Switch Online, like you said, it's $80 a year, right, for the higher tier, which I don't subscribe to, the higher tier. But that actually might not be a terrible deal, because here I am. I bought, I mean, it hasn't arrived yet. I don't think it's supposed to get here until summer. I bought the Analog 3D, which is their FPGA N64 system. I bought N64 controllers on Amazon to go with it that are like Bluetooth, but not actually shaped like a N64, but they have the buttons in the right place. So it feels like you're actually playing N64 games. And then I'm going to like my local place to pick up the N64 games that I loved from back when I was in the Army and that came out. I'm spending a lot of money on N64 games. And I could just pay $80 a year and buy the N64, and you could say the same thing for GameCube. You know what I mean?
But you are buying forever games right now.
Exactly.
You're right.
$80 a year is going to add up. Like that's what kills me. Is like that amount of stress where I'm like, I just spent $80. I better play the crap out of F-Zero GX right now because I got to get my money's worth. I don't want to have that feeling. I want to just be able to buy it and be like, I will play this when I am ready. And I now have the option for the rest of my life to do that.
Yeah, because you're comparing like, a shitty situation to like slightly less, right? Like there's no reason Nintendo couldn't just sell you F-Zero GX at $20, but they're not. And that kind of sucks.
Yeah. But although back when they did sell us, they had the virtual console, they were selling us games piecemeal. And everybody was like, we want Netflix is what everybody kept saying. We want Netflix where we can just subscribe and you send us all the Nintendo games. And then they did that and everybody was like, not like that.
Well, that was back.
Like,
people were
Yeah.
asking for that back when Netflix was awesome, right? Like I just said,
Yeah.
the deal keeps getting worse. And so
You're
like,
right-
we've
you're not
seen
wrong.
that. Yeah. And, you know, ask anybody now, they would love Virtual Console back as long as I get to keep the games that I bought in 2008, right? Like if I could keep those games
right.
and play them right now, that'd be awesome.
Right, because how
Yeah,
many
we have,
times
we have
have
all
we
the
bought these
hindsight of
games?
that now.
What'd you say, Russ?
I was just saying we have all that hindsight now that those games
Right.
could go away. And so it's like we're smarter now, and a little bit more bitter, I'd say.
Especially me.
Well, I mean, we've seen Nintendo, and not just Nintendo. I mean, they're not the only ones doing this, but we've seen servers shut down over and over and over, and games disappearing. And you know, like we said at the beginning of the show, we were talking about some of the games will actually be on the cards, and some of them won't be on the cards. Once the servers are shut down, it doesn't matter if you have that card, you're screwed. And that sucks.
Yeah.
And I also wonder if you can take that card and, like, if I buy one of those games that comes on a card that isn't actually on the card and I still have to download it, and I install it in my I put it in my Nintendo Switch, and then I say, "Oh, Rich, you're going to love this game. Here you go." Will I be able to hand it to you and you be able to put it in your Switch and play it? That is a big question, and I part of me thinks that no, they won't go that far, but they will.
They
We
didn't
had a-
say they wouldn't.
Right.
That's the
Exactly.
thing, right? That's the point of it.
And we had a couple things last week where we're like, I don't think they'll go that far. And then they did, right? Like the Nintendo Switch Online subscription for upgrades was literally something Carrie said as a joke.
Right. And I said, no, don't do that, Nintendo. Although I thought it was going to be Nintendo Switch Online for upgrades, and you
And you
also
pay
have
for
to
it.
pay for the upgrades.
Yep.
So I'm glad that they didn't do that. That's what I thought Carrie was saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So emulation. We talked about emulation a little bit, but apparently the Nintendo Switch 2 is so different than the Nintendo Switch 1 that Nintendo made their own emulator. And so when you are playing, hey, Nintendo, you always said emulation is bad, right? When you are playing Nintendo Switch 1 games on your Nintendo Switch 2, you are emulating them. I wonder if this is why Nintendo wanted Ryujinx so bad.
Yeah, I think that Yuzu and Ryujinx were part of it, but I think that it's a combination. They said, it's a combination of emulation and like hardware stuff, and I think that's just a proton, like a translation layer. So it's kind of like a mixture of those, which will be very interesting to see how that falls out for people who try to emulate Switch 2 games, and hardware wise, like, is it not going to be as easy to get into? But already we're seeing there are lists of games that are not compatible with the Switch 2, which to me indicates that, yes, they are using software in order to play this stuff. Same like how we had Xbox games that were compatible with the Xbox 360, like all that stuff. There's a list of it because it was a software solution. And so I'm seeing the same thing here. Yeah, it's interesting how that's all coming out, and they'll never acknowledge that, oh yeah, it's okay if we do emulation. It's just not okay if you do it. They're just never going to say that. So
Yeah. I mean, we've had that discussion so often, probably on here, about the difference between piracy and emulation, right? Like, and you can, I would love to make a matrix to explain, right? Like, you can have piracy with emulation, piracy without emulation, emulation with piracy, without piracy. And, you have all of these permutations, and emulation without piracy is literally this. It's Nintendo making an emulator for a thing that, that they have control over, they have the rights over. So that's not, I mean, they've obviously done that before with everything on the Nintendo Switch Online and Virtual Console. That's all emulation, right? So it is a little surprising that they needed to do that for the Switch 1. And it's disappointing to know that there are games that are not compatible, and not just because of the IR sensor or whatever, but that they're just not compatible. So I do wonder if that's going to change over time, because that's something we saw with Microsoft, where the list was a lot smaller and it grew over time. It never was the full library, but it grew over time. So could be the same here.
You mean we got more games compatible over time, not less?
Right. Yes. The list of compatible games, not the list of incompatible.
I was thinking of a list
yeah.
of incompatible games.
Yep,
Okay.
fair.
Well, there you have it. That's the Nintendo Switch 2 in a bucket. You can carry it around with you if you want. I don't know why I said in a bucket, but I am of two minds on the Nintendo Switch 2, but I am still going to buy it because I'm a stupid, stupid man, and that's okay.
I think I'll buy it. I would even buy it day one as long as it's easily available to me, right? Like if I have to go through hoops, then and I don't make those hoops, I'm not going to cry over it. And I'm probably not going to go to eBay. I'll just, get it when I can get it.
Well, there's a 0% chance I will ever support scalpers by going to eBay, but right. I will. On whatever day that we can start pre-ordering, I'm going to have Best Buy and Target and everything bookmarked with my already signed in and ready to go, so I can try and beat the bots to the last thing. I will also, Russ, you mentioned earlier the requirements for pre-ordering. You have to have a year subscription of Nintendo Switch Online, and you have to have 50 hours of playtime on your Nintendo Switch. That's easy for me because I don't emulate Nintendo Switch games because I don't want to jump through the hoops. Like, it's too much of a pain in the ass. I just want to turn on my game and play it. So the easiest way to do that is to just buy the games and play them on that system. I know that you buy the games and then you just emulate them instead because you prefer to play them on other devices. I just don't want to do all that work. So I'll easily qualify, but I didn't sign up right away because I went to the website and I was like, I can't find where I'm supposed to go because it just said sold out.
Yeah.
And then I found a link the next day where I clicked on it and it was like, register your interest in pre-ordering. So we'll see what happens there. Real quick, before